So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're listening from in the world. Welcome to the ADHD Reframed project. This is season 2, episode 4. So to our followers, to my followers, then it's great to have you back again. And today, I'm joined by Rob. So Rob, would you like to do a little introduction to yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Emma. Hello, everybody, and wherever you are in the world, welcome as well. My name is Robert Annis. I am a organisational psychologist. What that means is that I help leaders and organisations create better organisations that hopefully are more effective and more successful. I'm also diagnosed with both autism and ADHD, and about 5 or 6 other things that no doubt we'll come on to. And I am also the co-founder of Neuro, and Neuro is a registered charity that is focused on, quite frankly, societal change.
I mean, you've just pricked my interest. Two major things there that you just said. Obviously, the first one is the ADHD and the autism, and the second one is psychology, because I am currently studying BSc psychology as an undergraduate, obviously, because it's a BSc. So yeah, you've got my full interest there. So what does a typical day look like for you then?
It's quite varied, I would say that much. So my background is organizational change. So I do have my master's is in organizational psychology, and I've used that to help dozens, if not hundreds, of organizations around the world. But these days, the everyday is focused a little less on that because the charity takes up a lot of my time. So it's sort of a different question when we say, what's an organizational psychologist day like versus what's the founder of a charity day like? But they are interestingly coalescing, I think it's safe to say, because what we're doing with the charity is not that dissimilar to what I was doing for a career, and that is organizational change. And organizations don't naturally change. They're a bit like human individuals in that way. There's a lot of resistance to change. The standard approach is to not change unless there's some sort of driver, such as making more money or beating a competitor or new technology, those kinds of things. And with the charity, we recognize that. There's no point in us going to an organization and say, you should be more supportive of ADHD people, because that's not in most companies' nature. And so that change doesn't happen naturally. So we actually work with them to give them the reasoning and understanding of why they need to change. And so in that sense, the organizational psychology and the neurodiversity change model that the charity Neuro is using are very closely related. And my wife is the co-founder, and her career is in change management. So we both have a sort of history in organizational change, and so we bring that lens with us. So it is very much an everyday situation where we're still helping organizations see where they can grow, where they can be more successful. And I think the key thing is that we're not interested in merely theoretical change. The change needs to be real. It needs to provide results. If there aren't numbers that can be seen at the end of it, our business case doesn't work in either for the organizational psychologist or for the charity.
Yeah. I'm actually doing an occupational psychology module this time that I'm submitting
Okay.
on Mondays. So it's like, oh.
Very relevant.
And I've done some previous change management studies, I mean, a long time ago now, but it's still there in the background that I often forget about. So yeah, it's quite interesting actually. So what would you like maybe to just talk me through your diagnosis, how you kind of came to being diagnosed, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So diagnosis itself is a pretty interesting path, as no doubt a lot of you know or are wondering about. I was very late diagnosed, so just a couple of years ago. So I'm 47 now, so I was about 45. So for a very long time, life was just hard. I didn't know why life was hard, but it was very hard. Employment was never really a path that worked for me. I've tried it a couple of times. For the most part, though, it's a case of just employment's not worked. I've applied for thousands of jobs, but it never works out. So I've been self-employed pretty much my whole life. There's not a penny of government help has ever come to me. That's not what I mean when I say I wasn't employed. I just mean that self-employment has been what's been foisted upon me, really. And the diagnosis process was surprising. It wasn't something that I'd really comprehended. I am quite intelligent. I'm quite self-supporting, and so the sort of narrative around ADHD and autism and other traits within the neurodivergent space are seen as disabilities, and so I didn't naturally identify in that way. So therefore, I wasn't naturally thinking, "Oh, I wonder if I have ADHD," or "I wonder if I'm autistic." It wasn't something that really crossed my mind until sort of it was suggested to me, and then we sort of went down this path. It was like, oh, crikey. And so I was very fortunate that my wife had private healthcare. Obviously, diagnosis at the moment is very hard to get a hold of through the National Health, sorry, can't talk, with the National Health Service, which is very unfortunate and really shouldn't be the case, but it is what it is. We can't change that today. So I went through private healthcare and was diagnosed, as I said, both autistic and ADHD, although considerably more autistic. I did there's several different tests that you can do for both autism and ADHD. For autism, I did the RADS-R, which is the adult Asperger's test. It's a very interesting one where they ask you a lot of questions, and the whole thing took about 6 hours. And it was very interesting because I think I sort of shocked the lady that was doing it, because the RADS R test, it's very interestingly done. It 240, I think, questions they actually go through. If you score above, I believe it's 65, you're considered to have autistic traits. So anything above 65, all the way up to 240. And I scored in the 200s. And she was like, wow, that's the highest score we've seen. And I couldn't tell if that was a good thing or a not so good thing. You know, had I won or had I really lost? And so that was a revelation for me. It was a really big shock because it wasn't that I was broken. I knew that. It was that I knew my brain was very, very different. And it explained a lot of where I've struggled because throughout my life, things like friendships and family and things like that weren't things that really worked out for me very well. And so the diagnosis ended up being something that allowed me to see my life through a different lens and really start to understand what had gone on. I had certainly been in denial a lot. I'd been hiding from sort of my truth, my reality, without realizing it. It wasn't sort of a conscious thing. And the diagnosis was very much of a eye-opener for me to comprehend really what was going on. And that then led to several other diagnoses. As many of you will know, comorbidity is, people say it's common. It should be expected. If you've got a very different brain, you're going to have different things going on, right? So then there were multiple other diagnoses of other things. And yeah, it's been quite the journey over the last 2 years to get my head around it all and understand it.
And I think for anybody, it is almost like there's lots of light bulb moments, I
Hmm.
think, and then I call them penny dropping moments where things just start making sense. And I was similar to you. I knew I was different when I was growing up, but I couldn't really tell you how or why. Um, and I was diagnosed in 2019, age 43, and only with ADHD.
Very
But
similar.
people say yeah, people do say, and I only kind of considered a diagnosis because I was promoted at work and I sat next to a different lady and she had been diagnosed with ADHD when she was in her late teens, which is still classed now as a late diagnosis. And she just kindly said to me one day, "You do know you've got ADHD, Emma, don't you?" And I laughed in her face, and I'm just like, I mean, I feel a little bit embarrassed when I say it now because I'm like, and then she printed off a survey for me and just casually left it on my desk. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks after that I filled it in. And the answers were 98% you have ADHD. So then I went to the doctors and I was referred to see a psychiatrist, which thankfully for me at the time was really quick. Because it was obviously before the pandemic and before the very long waiting lists. But I wonder, your kind of experiences as a man. Do you think that like around your mental health or just around your diagnosis? Because I know for women, obviously we've kind of been like not even acknowledged. I call us the lost generation, but I think sometimes it can be harder for men because there's still a stigma attached that you have to be strong and you have to just, get on with it. And, men's mental health is something that desperately does need to be made aware of more. But I wonder if your experiences have been any different that you've noticed because you're a man, if you don't mind asking that,
Of
answering
course,
that, I
no,
mean.
you can ask me absolutely anything. I would obviously preface it with the reality that I've not had the other shoe on. I've not been a woman, so I can't definitively say
Exactly.
that it's been different. But I can give sort of examples and my opinion.
Amazing.
Um,
Thank you.
of course, of course. I mean, certainly it caused a lot of mental health issues because I was very lonely. I didn't understand people. I would make mistakes constantly in conversation to the point where people would avoid me. Um, and I'm including family members. So it was significant, and that led to some very dark times. There was a lot of depression, anxiety, led to psychosis at one point for quite a period of time, which was very hard to deal with. And it was only aimed at myself. It was never about hurting anybody
Yeah, of
else. It was
course.
it was just the extreme stress of never belonging and never being accepted. And it was extremely hard. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Um, so yes, that was difficult, and no, I certainly couldn't ask for help. Whether or not that was because I was a man, I don't know, but I didn't have anyone to ask because there was nobody there. So it wasn't really an option. Um, so I think there is certainly a stigma around an older generation of men. I would think young men now, there is much more discussion around mental health, around openness, around um, emotions, right? It's perfectly normal now to hear a young girl talking about their emotions, whereas when I was young, wasn't really the thing. And so, yeah, it certainly caused a lot of problems. My parents were not particularly connected with sort of mental health or anything like that. My father and I were not close, and so I didn't have that sort of role model in that regard. So yeah, it certainly made it difficult. One of the best things it gave me, though, which is interesting, is throughout the years I've always got on better with women than men, and I never knew why that was. Now I believe it's because I never experienced the privilege that men tend to get in society. And so I identified more with others. And so whilst everyone else was going, I love football or I love Superman or G.I. Joe or whatever it was, all my heroes were of other types, whether it be Wonder Woman or whatever it was. And it was really interesting because all that did then was separate me even more. And so you sort of become more of a recluse than much else. So I think it is really tough. But it's made me extremely resilient. I really don't think there's much I can't get through now. So there's that upside. But yeah, it is very difficult when you feel like you don't belong anywhere and it's demonstrable. And part of that is actually not just the neurodivergence in the sense of ADHD and autism. It's the other diagnoses that I think actually have just as much impact because I have prosopagnosia, which is face blindness. So I don't remember faces.
Okay.
I lose my wife all the time.
Oh,
So it's very real problem, and it's not consistent. It's almost, if it was consistent, it would be better. The fact that it is patchy is actually, people don't believe it as much because if I remember them, you can see them going, oh, so you don't have prosopagnosia. But it is patchy. Along with that, alexithymia, which means I don't really comprehend emotions very well. I seem quite cold. It's not intentional. I'm just not particularly emotional. So people struggle with that, and also I can't understand their emotions. So I often misunderstand what they're trying to say to me because I don't comprehend the emotion behind it. And then there's several other diagnoses which I won't bore you or the audience with. But the one that I haven't mentioned, which is the most impactful, is something called SDAM, which not many people have heard of, which is, oh God, this is ironic, I can't remember what it's called, severely deficient autobiographical memory. Effectively, I don't have much past memory. So, as an example, looking at my emails before this, I think Emma and I have talked before, but I have zero recollection of it. I don't remember my childhood. I don't remember birthdays, weddings, holidays, conversations I've had with people. And so what that means is when you try and have interactions with people, they're based nearly always on previous interactions, and they remember those. And they expect you to remember those because that's the normal nature of things. And of course, I don't. And so part of the loneliness is also because for me, I don't remember a relationship with people, and they very soon figure that out, and they don't want to be connected with someone who doesn't remember them, right? I suspect it's insulting to them, right? Why wouldn't you remember me, right? And so that's probably being the hardest thing of all of my neurodivergence, is the fact that when you can't remember the past, you're not part of normal society, because all experiences are based upon that. And so that's debilitating. So it's almost impossible to have friends, for example. So things like that, that's really tough. And it's not something I understood until I was diagnosed. And that's part of the problem. I didn't know that I wasn't remembering everything. I just thought everyone was better than me. I just had the emotional understanding of I'm crap. That's all I sort of had. And so that's pretty tough to live with. It makes, just everyday life very, very tricky. And I think it would be great if we can help the world start to understand that neurodivergence is broad. It's not just ADHD and autism, which are obviously the two most talked about, but there is lots of other things. And most people who are neurodivergent have more than one symptom or trait. So yeah, it's a broad world, and it can be a tricky one.
shame on anyone if they, after listening to this or watching us, shame on them if they still think negatively, because I can imagine that that has been really kind of challenging for you, particularly when you're trying to find where you belong, or you're trying to find, just some connections, and, them no, the alexithymia and the I'm not gonna try and remember what the word what the word I'm sorry, what the word shame on anyone, like, I just don't understand the concept of, if you have an understanding of something, then how can you be biased, or how can you be, unsympathetic or unempathetic towards something? I just think that must have been really challenging for you.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's no sort of prettying it up and saying, oh no, it's fine. I mean, yeah, it definitely sucks, and it means that it's very hard for me to have the normal experiences that most people have. And over the last 2 years, at least now I can sort of look in the mirror and go, this isn't all your fault, right? Whereas up till now, all I've known is people don't want to be around me. And it sucks, it's hurtful. But at
Of
least
course.
now I can sort of look in the mirror and go, well, it's not necessarily my personality. You're hopeful it isn't. But there's no resolution for it. It's not like I can fix that problem. So it's more a case of obviously through my life I've become very comfortable with being alone. It's a perfectly normal state for me. So it's not anymore. It's not an uncomfortable reality. So it is what it is.
I mean, that's a huge, um, yeah, I'm a little bit lost for words, and that doesn't happen that happens rarely for me, and it's, yeah.
Yeah, it does have one upside, which I found, and that is that um, it's really hard to explain to somebody what it's like to have a different life. So the example I always think of is it's very hard for a man to understand menstruation or menopause or something like that, right? Really, really hard to comprehend what's involved. And so for the most part, men just kind of go, ugh, I don't know what that is and I don't want to talk about it, right? It's pathetic. But anyway, um, it's very much the same with neurodivergence. We can talk about autism and ADHD, but for those who are quote unquote neurotypical, they just look at you and either go, well, you're not in a wheelchair, so you're not disabled, or what is it that you want from me? Because I don't know what it is you need, or right. It's hard for them to comprehend. And ADHD and autism are very broad terms. They present very differently in different individuals. So it's not easy to sort of say, well, if you have ADHD, this is what you need, because it's not the same for everybody. And you can't explain it because of that in such a way that people can easily understand. But at least with my diagnosis, it's a small plus, but I'm going to go with it. I can say to someone or an audience, imagine if every time you walked into a meeting room, everyone remembers all the past meetings, recognizes the people in the room, and can interact normally because of that. Now imagine you can't. You don't remember any of these people, but they'll remember you. You don't recognize any of them, but they all recognize you. Imagine how hard it would be to have a conversation. And then I sometimes actually do exercises with people and try and help them actually experience it. And this is actually a way that people can start to understand neurodivergence, actually how different our brains can be across the range of a population, which is the definition of the word neurodiversity, right? It just means across a population, we have different brains, just like we have different heights and different weights. It's just a natural variance. And this way means I can actually talk to leaders of organizations and say, I can help you actually understand what neurodivergence is so that we can then talk about how do we help make your organization understand these people, because some of them can be brilliant and you probably need them in your organization, because if you focus on just having people who all think the same, you're going to struggle a lot with innovation, because for innovation to occur, you need different minds. So if your organization isn't building for cognitive diversity, you've got a bit of a problem on your hands. And so in this way, we can help organizations, maybe a university or a business or government or whatever, start to comprehend that neurodivergence is something that's important, needs to be looked at.
I think it's useful. My way of saying that, which you said beautifully, would be that everyone has a place at the table, and we all have different skills. And I think it's important for neurodivergent people to kind of be in a kind of committee, in a seat at a table in a committee, or just being able to kind of use their brains to their advantage and to the advantage of the company or the university, or something similar.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
because I think we have so much, like you said, innovation, creativity. Like, I join dots that people don't even know the dots are there, and I'm just, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I do think it's important for us to kind of have these conversations as well. Just because, then, people can kind of understand but yeah, I think you're really brave. You're turning up today and you're being honest about your experiences, and
Well,
takes a lot of courage. So thank
oh,
you for
oh,
talking
you're
about this.
welcome. I'm not sure I can agree that it's courageous. I mean, there's people out there struggling with a lot worse, right? I mean, God, you think of the average woman who has to go to a bar and think, do I need to cover my drink? Am I going to be safe getting home tonight? Right? That's courage, right? I don't think that what I'm doing is courageous. I think it's just um, I'm just doing what I think is right. I guess I'd say that. But yeah, I think it's one thing I would say, Emma, is I want to change the voice away from saying we should be at the table because it's the right thing to do, although it is ethically, morally, absolutely. The problem is if someone's in power and we're asking, we want to be in the room as well, they're going to see that as their privilege being reduced. And so it's hard to get into that room unless we can not just go for that ethical, moral approach, but also say, you need to do this because otherwise your business won't be as successful or your university won't get the 25% of PhD students that are neurodivergent, right? And you want those people. And so I think it's definitely the ethical, moral side, but we also need to talk to people in a language that is relevant to them.
I love that. I do that a lot with my university. I talk to them. I try and because I advocate a lot within my university. I'm a distance learner, so everything's 100% online. So I don't actually I see people, but it's all virtual. And I do advocate a lot for students like me. Uh, and I just, I try whenever I talk to somebody whom I know maybe or definitely is neurotypical, I
Mhm.
always try and explain things in a way that everyone can understand, because then I think, like yourself, there's a psychological theory called the double empathy theory. I think it's in social psychology, if I remember rightly. Um, and it's like although we can't really empathize with people that we're not going through similar experiences, we can kind of build on an understanding, a mutual understanding. And I think using clear and direct language when explaining anything, when it comes to, neurodivergent experiences, or, even just down to dyslexia, dyscalculia, just, things that we've been aware of ADHD and autism for many, 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 many years. It's just we're in a massive flux of us all getting diagnosed later in life. But I think I always try and kind of explain things in a language that everybody can understand, and it's not normally academic either, because although you're at university, you've got to write and format and do everything in academic kind of style writing, and it just, yeah. But I try and keep things as easy to understand as possible, because then everybody hopefully can understand. And what may happen then is it might open up a conversation between people that would not normally kind of want to talk to me, because then they want to know and understand a little bit more. And it's just simple things that we can kind of simple, small steps that we can move in a better direction. So then, so I love the fact that you're already kind of doing that at big institutional kind of
Mhm.
places and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
certainly trying. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean, well, it's early days, right? I mean, so the charity Neuro that we've started, we started the journey about a year ago, and finally got the charity registered about 2 months ago.
okay.
Uh, we're now working with I think 6 or 7 universities across the UK and Australia. Um, we've got businesses we're working with, schools, about 20 something schools in London. We've been in touch with them, working with them. And we're now at the point where we're starting to open it up, because what we've built with the charity is the concept of organizations need to start thinking about how they design themselves better, right? Because right now, the concept of organizational culture is very much around the idea of sort of come into our company and align with how we think and our values and all this kind of good stuff. But what we're actually doing is saying to people, sort of come in and shave off your edges so you become more like each other. And that's where we lose the problem solving, the innovation, the creativity, etc. And all the neurodivergent people, because they don't look and, they don't fit in. And so organizations are actually building themselves into a slower form of growth, because they're actually reducing that change level, that innovation level. And so what we're saying is, actually, you need those people. So how do you attract them? Because right now, most people who are neurodivergent look at workplaces and universities and so on concerned, because they don't know what it's going to be like when they get there, right?
Yep.
There's a wall effectively you can't see in, and you don't know what the social rules will be when you get in there. And if you're anything like me, you can't read the social rules anyway, so it's really scary. So for organizations who need to attract that talent, they need a way to do so. So what we've done is create in this charity an accreditation that organizations can gain. Now, this is not one that's sort of a pay-to-play model. You can't just pay £500 or dollars or whatever and get the accreditation, then attract people in. That's not how it works. Sorry. Uh, Actually, you'll get assessed as to how neuro-inclusive you are, and then you're given information on where you can improve. If as an organization you take that advice, which you kind of hope you would, right? You want to be a good organization for your people to make you more successful. If you make changes, so you invest time, money, effort, and become that better organization, then the evidence of those changes, that's what actually gives you the accreditation. So we'll only give the accreditation out to companies that have changed, which means now that accreditation acts as like a beacon. Because if you're, I don't know, an 18-year-old girl and you've got ADHD and you've gone through school and it was okay, you got through because the school did a few things to help you. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. And so you're looking at universities. Well, you're looking at 3 universities, say, and they've all got kind of the same web page that says we're inclusive and we love our students, kind of thing, probably the same sort of copy, probably copied and pasted. But it doesn't really give you a view in. Right? Have they really done that? Or has just somebody written that? Right? Is it just some guy in marketing wrote it with absolutely no knowledge? Who knows? Certainly that young lady doesn't know. But if one of those 3 universities has the neuroaccreditation, well, then that young lady can look at that and go, well, at the very least, I know some external third party has helped them change, has helped them invest and become neuro-inclusive. So they may not be perfect, but at least I know they're going down that path and it's important to them. So that's probably where I'm going to go. And what's interesting is, for that young lady, is when she's looking at 3 universities, because the overriding thing is she wants to go there and get a degree, the most important thing is going to be, will she graduate? Not which is the best course. Because if they've got a course and she got, that's the topic, that's the one I love, but she can't graduate because they don't support her, then it's kind of irrelevant what the topic is. So actually, the neuroaccreditation, which acts as that beacon, may be actually the thing that draws her to that university, almost irrelevant of the topic. And that's kind of the same with the workplace too. Wouldn't you rather work somewhere you're happy, fulfilled, safe, even if they pay you a little bit less? Probably, right? And so we're hoping, again, it's early days, but we're hoping that the neuroaccreditation becomes something that organizations, whatever industry, whatever location around the planet, that the accreditation becomes something that is sought after And through that, we start creating more inclusive workplaces, which is better for everybody, right? Um, and the way we're doing that is we franchise it, quite simply. We're licensing what we built. And so if there's somebody like me out there watching this and you're neurodivergent and you've been self-employed and sort of coaching and training and being that consultant and you've got your own business, I'm not going to take away everything you've already got. You've probably built your own training, your own marketing. Well, we've also built lots of training and marketing and proposal materials and all that stuff, as well as the accreditation and the credibility that goes with all of that. And you can come to us and work with us and just be a partner with us. You can carry on doing your own thing, but add neuro into it, which makes you more credible, but also brings you more business. And we don't get involved with any sort of the finances between you and the client. You charge what you want, right? We're just involved in the accreditation piece, but you get access to all of our training. So we're hoping that that will be a good business model, which definitely shifts the understanding around the world of neurodivergence and changes organizations, but also helps these individuals who deserve an income as much as anybody, right? And so, yeah, that's sort of the model and what we're trying to do. And yeah, we're hoping we can make a difference and make a change in the world that's valuable for everybody.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to make a difference. And I think the way that you've just explained your accreditation is going to be obviously your biggest selling point, because if an institution or, company or whoever reaches out to you and their end goal is to be more inclusive and then to kind of work towards that with you and your charity and stuff, is going to be, yeah, there's only positives that I can see coming out of that, because I have found a lot um, in the last few years, conversations I've had, when you start breaking down neurodivergence into, like, it's a big umbrella term, isn't it? And I know we had the deficit model, and then the social model, then awareness. And I like a strength based approach personally, which is why I started the podcast, because I think that once we focus on like the things that we do very well and then harness them in our everyday life, then we're moving kind of out of the I can't do that, but you can find it challenging, but this is how you're going to this is how you're going to cope and kind of move forward. And I think when I've had conversations with people and they're talking about inclusion, and I talk about, the neurodiversity umbrella term and everything that it's got included within it, and how the symptoms are a spectrum, and, my symptoms will be different to yours, and yours will be different to,
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
people. And the problem, and I think a lot of the problem is because it's quite a massive piece of work for any kind of organization to say, or to get to the point where they're like, yes, we're inclusive of everyone, but you never can be, or you can work towards it, but it's an forever changing, because you've got people that have different symptoms, people that have, like, the symptoms vary day by day, you know it's just. And so I think it is an ongoing innovation that needs to kind of just naturally happen, which I know it won't naturally happen, but I think starting from where you are, you're making a huge kind of step forward for neurodivergent people like me. So yeah, hats off.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, it is. I think the problem you're describing is also one I've put a fair amount of cerebral time into, and certainly the engine of neuro began as the accreditation, which is called the neuro standard, and that's certainly the main focus. But we've had to think about it carefully and not build ourselves just as a charity, because if I go and talk to, I don't know, the CEO of Barclays or something, they're not used to talking to a charity. They don't know how to do it. They're used to talking to consultancies. So we've made the charity look like a consultancy. We've got products and services, right? And that's intentional. It means businesses particularly will know how to work with us. It's also meant we had to build those products and services. So there's a couple of key things that are critical when we think about how neurodivergence is seen in organizations. The current model is bonkers. It's absolutely hilarious. So let me explain why. So the idea is this. If you are disabled in any way, including neurodivergence, you get, reasonable accommodations, right? Whatever the heck that's meant to mean. But the point is, all you have to do is go, excuse me, I'm broken. Could I please get some help? Now, first things first, you've got to say, excuse me, I'm broken. It's how the model begins. Well, that's pretty shame-inducing, right? It's pretty rough. And also, it pretty much labels you as someone who's probably not going to have a great career because you're seen as being vulnerable. You're seen as someone who can only succeed with help, which is not what you normally see as sort of a career climber, right? And so it's very problematic as a model. Additionally, it places even more pressure and expectation and burden on that individual because it says, first of all, you need to tell us what the problem is. How does that person know what the problem is? Right? I wasn't diagnosed for 45 years. So someone has said to me, what do you need? What's the problem? I don't know. If they'd said, what do you need to solve the problem? How would I know?
Exactly.
But when you have a problem, it doesn't mean you know the solution. It just means you're struggling. That's all you know, right? And so what's absolutely hilarious about it is this concept of inclusion actually acts exclusionary, which is, when you think about it, it can only be funny because it's one of those, if you don't laugh, you cry, right? But that is the reality. When you say to somebody, we expect you to be shamed, be sort of recognized, potentially be alone, understand what the problem is, understand how to explain it, right? Who has the vocabulary to explain how they're struggling, and then know what the solution is, right? The odds of somebody figuring all of that out on their own isn't far off nil. And so the point is, the reasonable accommodation model doesn't particularly work. It's a lovely intention. The 2010 Equality Act is the jewel in the crown of the UK. I'm not saying anything bad about it. And if Nigel Farage gets the power and gets the Equality Act, somebody find him and take him out. But the Equality Act is epic. It just needs the ability to work. So one of the products we built as part of Neuro is a questioning engine, effectively, and it allows somebody to understand their situation better. The human brain comprehends most things in emotions and outcomes. It's not very good at understanding causal relationships. Sorry, everybody, it's not what its skill set is. And so the way the human brain comprehends things is generally, I had a tough day, it's made me feel a bit upset, and I fancy a glass of wine, which all of that sounds great. I have no issue with any of it, but it doesn't help understand what that person needs. So what we have is called resonance, and resonance helps that individual actually break down the day. It helps them understand, oh, in this meeting, Tom kept talking over me. And because Tom kept talking over me, I started to get overwhelmed and I started to get more and more uncomfortable and more withdrawn. And so resonance helps the person see where they were struggling. And then it says, okay, so you can get overwhelmed and you can then get withdrawn. Right, here's some techniques that might be useful in this situation. Would you like to try some of these? It can also suggest products and services as well. And then that individual is looking at it and they can say, right, I think this one would be good and this one might be good. And so out of it, they actually get ideas and solutions, right? And then that can be anonymized and passed on to a manager, right? Or it can actually be rolled up to the team or the entire organizational level. And this helps managers, leaders, HR start to comprehend what they need to change in organizations. So what Resonance does, rather brilliantly, I think, it takes away that legal scare that organizations have about, what do we do about these neurodivergent people? What if we do it wrong and end up going to an employment tribunal? Let's just not do anything,
Yep.
which is kind of where we are.
Yep.
So neuro is, well, I said at the very beginning of this, when you asked, what do I do and what's the charity? Neuro is a social change engine. It's psychologically designed to change society. That's what it is. And so all the problems around neurodivergence, I spent the last 12 months unemployed, focused only on this and building neuro. And so these products and services now exist that can build better companies, that can build better universities, schools, and can make a better society. And so that's what we're trying to do. And so I'm really hoping it works.
Sounds incredible. Like, a hats off to you. Considering the things that you have to kind of deal with day to day, with your memory and your autism and the ADHD, and yeah, just, yeah, kind of hats off to you. It sounds absolutely amazing. Like, I
Thank you.
can't, it's definitely needed. Definitely. Because I've quite a good example of what you've just said as well. When I first applied to study my degree, first of all, I didn't think they would accept me because I was always told that I was thick because I do things differently, which almost became my self-fulfilling prophecy, but it wasn't. And then if you're studying and you get student finance, then you can get something called disabled students allowance. I'm sure you know this. And I know, I just offended you by just saying, Rob, that I'm sure you know this in case that you haven't.
God, no.
Oh,
Good luck offending me.
thank goodness for that then.
Gosh, no. You're
No,
absolutely.
I worry about little things like that. But DSA, Disabled Students Allowance. When I first put the application in and I was awarded it, I had a certain amount of hours of study skills and mentor appointments. And the study skills, the first few two tutors that I had for my study skills used to say to me, "So what is it exactly that you struggle with? What are And I sat there and I was like, I don't know, because first of all, I've never studied 100% online. Second of
Mhm.
all, I've never studied a degree. My highest level was a level 3, which is similar to an A level. I hadn't been in education for a while because I've also got fibro and live with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. So, um, you know, I don't know. Like, I've tried and tested so many different subjects and topics and different ways to kind of learn in the past, and unfortunately ended up dropping out because people used to say to me, like, what do you need? And I'm like, and I would say to them, I don't know what I need. You're the experts. Yeah, and it's only like I'm on my sixth study skills tutor now, and I have to say that the woman she's just a game changer because she's got ADHD, so she understands ADHD. But yeah, she kind of meets me where I'm at, and she sees me, and she's so good at kind of gently encouraging me. And it's just, I sometimes sit here and think, because I've only had her for like maybe 6 or 7 weeks now. And I've had to change 5 times because she's my sixth tutor. And I started thinking that was something wrong with me because you do, don't you? You turn that, we turn that kind of, that
How else could
situation.
you see it?
Exactly,
Thousands
exactly.
and thousands of other students have passed these courses. I'm struggling. It must be me.
Yeah,
I mean, how else do you see
exactly.
it?
And I can't gel, or I can't get the right support from the right person. So obviously then that's my fault. It's not anyone else's fault. Um, but even my partner has said, like, every kind of appointment I've had with her recently, like how much better and more productive like the sessions go. But one of the main things she said to me, the first time that I met with her, because we had like an initial kind of, are we going to gel kind of appointment to start with before we went forward, and like it was just the first kind of experience of, she said to me, so, tell me a little bit about yourself, tell me what else you've got on apart from your studies, can you tell me some specific things that you struggle with, and if you can't, that's fine, because not everybody knows what they struggle with. And I was just like, why is she needs to do the training, I think, for the ADHD students, study skills tutors, because she's just a breath of fresh air. And it's, she kind of meets me where I'm at, and she knows, you know, but because I feel safe and comfortable with her, I don't feel, it might sound, I'm 50 now, so it might sound a little bit childish for a 50-year-old, but I kind of like the fact that she sees me, she knows exactly what I need, when I need it, and how I need it, and we just work really well together. And I think it's a fantastic, because I was able to say to her, right, okay, so I struggle with planning, I struggle with academic writing, I struggle with the academic. If I didn't, I say this regularly, if I didn't have to submit any kind of academic writing, I would have passed by now. But the academic writing for me is the biggest challenge. But that doesn't mean to say that it's impossible. It just means I have to put in a lot more work when it comes to kind of, me writing and making sense of what I'm trying to. There's lots of things going on. But because I've had that 2.5 year experience before I before I changed this lady, it's helped me, because I could then sit there and say to her, I know exactly what I need, and this is how I need it. And that's pretty much what we follow all the time. We just follow the same process. But it's often, I know, I've done different presentations. I've done a lot of webinars at my university, and I've done a lot of talks, and there's lots of students that always kind of reach out and say, but I don't know what I need. And I'm like, well, let's just sit down and have a conversation about that then, and see if you can find out what you need. And they say to me regularly, like, why does no one else do this? And I'm like, I don't know, but a lot of the time, even when I was working, I was diagnosed while I was still working. Unfortunately, I had to stop working in 2019 because of the fibro. And that is a worry of mine, finding a job, because not only have I not worked for 7 years, it's like I have multiple things to manage. But it's like I didn't know what I needed back then. But yeah, so there's just the point I was trying to make with a massive tangent is the fact that as neurodivergent people in society, we don't really know what we might need. We don't know what reasonable adjustments we're going to need putting in place. And just 1 week extension to write a 4,000 word essay, I'm sorry, it's not good enough. It's not useful at all.
No, the problem that then occurs, and it sounds like you managed to avoid it, which is impressive. Most people do not, is that when someone says, what do you need? And you don't know, particularly if they're in a position of authority, like they're your manager or something, then you feel extreme pressure to give them an answer. And so I was at this conference, and there was a panel, and there's this really stupid thing. So all conference organizers, if you're listening to this, please hear me. If you want to get experts on neurodiversity, don't go to the head of HR of a company. They're not the experts on neurodiversity. They're the ones who are struggling to figure out what to do. So they're not the experts. So go and find people who actually work in this or study it or actually are the experts, right? They're the people who actually can come and give you answers. I'll explain why I'm saying that. At this conference, there was a panel. I was on a panel after this, so I was there waiting to go up. And so I was listening to the panel before. And there was 4 people up there. They were all from very big companies, the names of which you would recognize. And they were asked by the audience, what do you do for your autistic work staff? And there was this sort of quiet, but it was very clear none of them wanted to try and answer it, which was a red flag in of itself at a neurodiversity conference. But one of them then sort of bravely spoke up, was so confident in their conviction, because obviously they had gone and asked their autistic employees. And the result was, she very proudly said to the organization, to all the audience, we've got some plants in the office now because they like plants, and we give them some fidget spinners as well. And so obviously these poor employees have been asked, what do you need because you're autistic? They couldn't think of anything. So they said,
Plants and
we
fidget
quite
toys,
like
yeah.
plants.
Yeah.
And you just, it's just bonkers that then management go, oh yeah, okay, and we hear you, so we'll get you some plants. How is that going to help anything? And it's just the lack of comprehension of people who are struggling need actual help, not placating, right? Giving them a set of headphones is placation. Actually helping them and helping them discover what they need is what is actually required. And frankly, you should do it anyway for all your employees, but let's leave that to one side. But yeah, it is staggering how much of neuro-inclusion is simply placating. It's just, oh, we'll give you a place to go and hide. We'll give you headphones to shut you up. You just don't have to come to the office. It's fine. These are human beings. They deserve as much of a chance as anybody. And we're also losing a lot of productivity because we're not including them. So yeah, I think we can do better.
I heard something last year. It could have been a few years ago because my memory is a bit sketchy sometimes. And I heard something a few years ago around autistic and ADHD students at a university or at a graduation ceremony being segregated in a different room rather than sitting in with everyone else. And I was like, but why are they being segregated? That's
Mm-hmm.
then just showing that they're kind of been hidden away, or they're, and I understand like that. This is the thing where you've just said about placating. This is one of them placating kind of situations where I think that the reasonable adjustment was that if you feel very overstimulated and you get overwhelmed, how about you have a quiet space that you can go sit in if you need it, or just go and sit in there all day or whatever. But then again, I was like, but hold on a minute, then that is segregating them. We're hiding them away then. And maybe they might need some loop earphones, or they might need some like big noise cancelling earphones, or they might just need to sit over to kind of like the edge or near an exit so they can get up and walk and just go and kind of regulate themselves if they're able to do that, rather than just segregating them or putting them in a separate room. What about trying to kind of, and I said, what about asking the segregated people that you're just gonna shove in a room? I'm sure they weren't just shoved in there, because I'm sure it wasn't like that at all. But how about you ask students or employers that are being, because they get so socially overwhelmed quite easily. How about you just ask them? And if they don't know, how about just sit and have a conversation with them and try and see, like, lots of people say that people with ADHD, we think outside the box. I don't have a box. I just have quite a unique way of kind of looking at
Mm-hmm.
things. And it's always people focused because I just love helping other people. And it's just by that simple kind of conversation. It wasn't a simple conversation. I didn't mean it as a derogatory towards me, but just by having that conversation, I was like, but hold on a minute. Why you be segregating people off into a separate room? Like, I'm sorry, but that's not that's them making them feel even less like they belong to a community. Or if and so yeah, I love the fact that you're doing all of this work.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you. Yeah,
fascinating to
I
me.
really appreciate it. For anyone who's interested, whether you are a business or university who'd like to be a client, whether you're someone who's interested in potentially being what we call a commercial delivery partner, which is somebody who's a sort of consultant or coach or trainer or something like that, and you'd like to be a licensee or franchisee or whatever the word might be, or if you're looking to volunteer, we've got about 12 volunteers around the world currently, from India to North America, UK, Switzerland. We just had a chap from Ethiopia reach out. So we'll see if Addis Ababa is next on the list. But yeah, if you're interested in any of those things, or you just want to talk, if you want us to come in and do a talk with your company, right? It's a small thing, but we can do that as well. The critical thing is reach out. We're going to change the world, and we'd like everyone to come along with us. This is going to help neurodivergent people. It's going to help companies be more successful, universities be more successful. Just trying to make a better world by designing it a little bit better through organizational psychology. So come and have a look at the website. It's neuro, as in neuro, neurocharity.org. Or my name's right there on the screen. Go and look me up on LinkedIn. I think it's linkedin.com/in/Rob Annis, I think, off the top of my head. And hopefully this will be all posted with the video. But do pop onto the website and reach out to those through there, or email. It's robert.annis@neurocharity.org, unsurprisingly. And yeah, the sooner you reach out to us, the sooner we can make the world a better place, and you can be better organizations or making more money. So yeah, please join us.
And I'd like to just echo exactly what Rob has just said, because I think the more understanding, the more people get inquisitive about neurodivergent people and our symptoms, the better kind of understanding and empathy we're going to be able to kind of just grow and, support people like you and I in a way that's very different. So yeah, I'm massively all for that. So yeah, to our listeners, to the people listening today, apparently this makes me cringe, because apparently I should be asking at the end of each episode, can you follow and like me on social media, on Spotify, and it's meant to be the best way to get more followers, and I find it really uncomfortable, because I like the message. I'm not like, I just want to help as many people as I can, but equally I would just like to echo what you've just said. Like, if anyone that's listening today wants to learn more, I'll put the link to your LinkedIn, Rob, and your website in the description of the podcast episode today. So that will go out, so people will be able to find you quite easily through. But yeah, to the followers and listeners, please follow and share with your friends, your family, anyone that you think these conversations will kind of help and support others. And I am just starting to branch out into a little bit of public motivational speaking.
Very good.
So I'm just looking for some opportunities to talk, basically, because I love talking.
Yeah, no,
But
I hear you. I
but
do a lot of the public speaking and the talks myself, so it's a lot of fun. I did just think of one thing I didn't mention, if I can just quickly say, because this is
no, of
for
course.
everybody out there. The website's worth checking out no matter what. It's pretty good. But critically on there's a resource that's probably helpful for a lot of people. When I got diagnosed, I didn't know where to look. I just went online, so I tried to find stuff, and probably everyone does that. Most of the stuff on there is crap. There's a lot of bad stuff on there. On our website, we've got a free resource, imaginatively called the library. If you go there, we've tried to put lots of stuff. It's growing. The volunteers love it, so they're playing with that and adding more stuff. But there's everything there from I've just been diagnosed, what do I do, to I've got neurodivergent kids, what do I do, to I'm a manager with neurodivergent employees, all these kinds of things. There's much deeper dive into autism, ADHD, prosopagnosia, alexithymia, all these things. There's a glossary of neurodivergent words and terms, so you can just search and find lots of different things. There's practical guides for certain situations for certain people. And then finally, there's tools and templates that can be downloaded. Things like there's one for I'm a manager and I have neurodivergent employees. How do I run this meeting? And there's literally a template you can download that will help you understand how you do that. So the library is free and always will be. It's there for anybody to go and use. If you want to link to it from your website, companies, if you want to give it to your employees and that just share it, it's there to help people. So if you've got questions, go and have a look there, and hopefully that can help you.
Yep. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to me today. It's been fascinating for me. So I just wondered if you have, I call them pearl of wisdom. Is there anything that maybe either when you realised that you were neurodivergent, or after you were diagnosed, or since then, is there anything that you wish that you had known that was quite, it's been life changing or profound for you?
Um, it's probably not much of a pearl of wisdom. It's just a moment of honesty. When I was diagnosed, I think the immediate, well, a couple hours later, but the reaction was anger, because all I could think was, I'm 45 years old and I've wasted my life. Um, and I was so frustrated to find out that all of the problems in my life, um, if I had been diagnosed much, much earlier, uh, life would have been a lot better for me. There'd be probably people I'd still be talking to that, well, they still be talking to me. Um, and so there was a lot of anger, screaming, crying. I yeah, just had a full on tantrum, I think is probably the nicest way to put it. I was like a 3-year-old autistic kid in a supermarket, screaming and crying on the floor, but as a 45-year-old man, so yeah. But it was such a shock. It was just such a big thing for me to comprehend. I'd always relied on my mind. I'm quite bright, I'm quite intellectual, and so my dislike for myself wasn't focused on my brain. I liked my brain. So to find this out was really traumatic. It was genuinely traumatic. It's the best word I could think for it. But the outcome of all of it has been that I now know myself so much better, and my life quality is just unbelievably better. And so I would just say, if there's anyone out there sort of having a think, should I look into getting diagnosed or anything like that? Um, Definitely be open to doing it. Uh, there's 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 a lot of positivity coming from it. Um, Something that I need desperately in my life, and this will sound pathetic, but when you've been alone for most of your life and everyone pushes you away, it's probably understandable, and that is validation. I need validation because the center of me is very negative about me. Uh, Obviously, a lot of experiences have promoted that. Uh, and we all deserve validation. And probably the most validating thing that's happened to me was getting diagnosed in my entire life. So I would just say for all of you, if it's something you're unsure about, and I would say don't be afraid or ashamed. It can be really helpful to get that validation, understand yourself a lot better.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And we are different, but we're not broken. We've got strengths. There's more strengths that we've got that we can use for towards our potential than we have kind of challenges. It's just about, I call it my journey of self-discovery. So I've just tried to find out as much as I can about, my symptoms and how they kind of manifest, which is just the word I use. I don't know if manifest is good for other people to use, but my symptoms manifest differently to everyone else's. So it's just about kind of trying to learn about yourself and also to be able to use your neurodivergence, whichever part you've got, or however kind of your symptoms present. It's just about learning to use it to your advantage and I call it harnessing as a super skill. And the super skill is what people are like, no, you can't say that you've got superpowers. I'm like, I don't really mind about that superpowers word. It's not something that necessarily that, there are things that I can do because I've got ADHD that maybe people without ADHD can't, but then there's also a lot of things that I also still find challenging. It's one of
Exactly.
these, it's like a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
I don't think it's a superpower, and I must admit it's not a word I'm a fan of, just because it's caused me a lot of difficulty, right? But just like any human, I've got things that I can do well and things that I can't do well. And so some of the things that I struggle with are significant, but there are some things that I can still do very well. And it's just, I think for any individual, it's finding what those strengths are. And if they don't align with normal society, that can be harder to find. And so you've got to spend more time and more effort finding them.
Exactly. Find your people. Get inquisitive about yourself and find your people, because we are out there in the world, you know. And once you find your people, then you kind of start feeling like you actually belong somewhere. So yeah, Rob, thank you so much for your time today. It's been
My pleasure.
fascinating. You've given me lots of things to think about, which is always good for me, because it's like I'm going to go away and have a little look at the other things that you've been diagnosed with, just because I want to kind of understand a bit more. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for being brave. I think it's brave and courageous because you've turned up and been honest. It might not feel like that to you, but I always think, you know, if I feel that someone is brave and courageous by being honest, then I think that deserves a welcome, a mention, not a welcome, a mention. But for today, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this recording. Listeners, I'm just going to say really quickly, because it makes me feel awkward, please like, share and follow Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and I can't remember the other one, Amazon Music, this podcast is on. And yeah, thank you, Rob, for your time today.